feel like I'm living a nightmare with Florida football right now because last week I was at their home opener versus Long Island where they won 55 to nothing. So to go from being in that stadium with almost 90,000 people to the atrocity that I watched last night versus South Florida, it really is night and day. And before I start, I just also want to give South Florida a ton of credit here. I said it on the show before that Alice Goulash, who is in his third season at South Florida, that guy's going to have a Power Four job either next season or the season after. I mean, for what he's done so far, knocking off Boise State and knocking off Florida, that's a testament to what he's building over there and his program too, because it's pretty obvious that they're buying into the vision. And also, South Florida, it's not the easiest place to win there. I mean, you're competing against some of the toughest teams in the country in terms of recruiting. And, for them to break into the top 25 and, for them to do that, I mean, that's definitely a testament to what they've done so far. But, when I look at this Florida team, there's just so many directions I can go in, right? Because, when they played Long Island last week, they didn't have a single penalty going into that game. So to go from not having a single penalty into that game to now having 11 penalties for 103 yards, it's just really frustrating to watch because if you think about this Florida team compared to last year to this year, the same criticisms that Florida fans, including myself, that are talking about, they're the same issues that we've been talking about last year. And I think no matter what, you're stuck with Billy Napier to a degree. I will not say on this program that Billy Napier needs to be fired today. I'm not that type of person. I think you have to feel this out, especially because Scott Strickland just got an extension a couple weeks ago. So Scott Strickland is going to be the ultimate decision maker. And yes, there is going to be a ton of pressure on them moving forward and just such a daunting schedule considering that South Florida, you probably thought you were going to win by at least 2 possessions. And now later into the season, you also play a Florida State team that's ranked now. And on top of that, you face LSU next week, and then you go to Miami the week after. So there's definitely going to be a very short turnaround time in terms of them really kind of getting their shit together in terms of salvaging this season. Because for them to be 13th ranked going to this game and then just putting on a complete dud in front of their home crowd is really just an atrocity. But the penalties, like I said, 11 penalties for 103 yards, but really the most obvious penalties that are just so costly were on that final drive of the game, which is probably what this conversation is really going to more or less be about because they were trailing 16-15 with 2:25 left. And when they were back on their own 11-yard line, South Florida had to go the entire length of the field for them to get to this point. So, I mean, the two biggest things were obviously that 15-yard pass interference call by Dijon Johnson, which resulted in a first down, which I think that was only a second down. But most importantly, this when Brandon Bett pulled a Jalen Carter and spit on the South Florida lineman too. So for them to give up 30 yards of penalties in that game-winning drive is just unacceptable, considering that they've had these same discipline issues throughout last season as well. So for them to not really kind of fix their mistakes, it's really just unfortunate, and it's really just a testament to the culture and the discipline that Billy Napier is kind of instilling. But most importantly, what the biggest issue is outside of them playing undisciplined and just sloppy play, poor execution all around, is Billy Napier is a play caller. Now, I will get some pushback on this in the sense that I think there's a lot of people that are going to point out Billy Napier's poor clock management in this game. The only reason why I'm a little bit less skeptical of that is when there was a minute 13 left in the game, South Florida just started running out the clock and Billy Napier didn't call any timeouts. The reason I don't really have an issue with that is because by that point in time, they were going to make a 25-yard field goal or something like that. So, I mean, I'm not going to sit there and make that a huge deal because I think Nico Gramatica is, the kid is a really good kicker. And considering that 20 minutes before that, he barely missed a 58-yard field goal right down the middle, I'm not going to sit there and say that he was going to miss a 25-yard field goal right down the middle. So I'm not as critical about that. In fact, I'd probably be more critical of the fact that on their final drive, they decided to call 2 pass plays and didn't make South Florida use any of their timeouts. If you want to really criticize Billy Napier about him as a head coach and his decision making, I think that's really worth more mentioning than him not calling his final 2 timeouts until like 26 seconds left, which at that point, like, why would you, like, don't even bother calling the timeout at that point. Just accept that you lost the game, and that's that. But back to the real issue at hand. The real issue, which I've been screaming on top of my lungs since I've been, covering this channel and covering the Florida Gators, is the problem with this team as it lies is Billy Napier as a play caller. That's always been their biggest problem, and it's just another example of it this week. Because even if you want to go back and watch some of the highlights in Long Island, and I think you see it in this game as well, it's pretty obvious that there is some sort of disconnect between DJ Lagway and some of the guys that he has. Because, Stravant, the transfer from UCLA, he should be getting some more touches. And Vernell Brown is also a freaking beast. I mean, that kid is electric, and you can see that there's just so much freaking talent in that guy that they got to find more ways to use him, because there are a lot of throws. I can think of at least 3 or 4 separate plays where these receivers are getting separation from their receiver, from their cornerbacks, and they're even being overthrown or underthrown or just not having any touch. And there was also one too where his interception in that game too was a result of his overthrow. So I think part of the problem, it could be him missing some of all of spring and all of fall practice. Maybe that's kind of where the disconnect is, because he went 23 for 33 for 222 yards with 1 touchdown, 1 interception. So it's, I'll be the first one to say on this show, I wasn't as worried about it, because I thought to myself, you know what, you play Long Island, you play South Florida, you're going to have a couple touch-up games before you have to go into LSU. So I was like, okay, it's probably not the end of the world. But now that I'm kind of watching this on the screen, I'm definitely a little bit nervous if you're a Florida fan out there, because from what you've seen right now, it's just, quite frankly, it's just unacceptable for what they are, because Florida is one of the top defensive lines in the entire country, and the secondary, all things considered, did their part this week. So for them to only be able to put up 16 points, and for the offense to really not be clicking at all, it's really just a shame, quite frankly, because for me, it's just inexcusable to have 355 yards of offense and you're settling for 3 field goals. It's just, you can't sit there and be surprised that people are calling for Billy Napier to be fired. Now, I'm never going to sit there and say that on the show. I'm just not that type of person, but there's some serious issues there, because the reality is Billy Napier as a play caller is just way too freaking conservative, given that the talent that they have. So that's one issue. Your second issue is DJ Lagway clearly doesn't look comfortable, and clearly just needs to be, you can clearly tell that being away from the field has certainly been a problem. And most importantly, I think I would also like to point this out too, and not completely dismiss DJ Lagway and Jaden Bowe. I don't want to put this all on them, but the offensive line really struggled last night too. I mean, they definitely made DJ Lagway move around a lot more than I kind of anticipated. The pocket wasn't clean in a lot of moments, and it just, to me, it just seemed like there was a lot of disconnection and just a lot of sloppy play in general. Because I think you have to say that, if you're a Florida fan, I mean, this is really just kind of deja vu all over again, because, this time last year we were talking about the Texas A&M game, where Texas A&M literally ran a 16-play drive where they ran the ball every single play and just ran the ball down Florida's throat. So it feels like we're just having the same conversation again in terms of the South Florida game. But right now, I think if you're watching this Florida team, I think any sort of optimism that you had going into the season has dissipated at this point. I mean, I am not for one to sensationalize things or to exaggerate things, but the issues or the criticisms or concerns that we've had going into the season are definitely true. I mean, Billy Napier at the moment has been a mediocre head coach. He's a guy that I think he deserves a ton of credit for, bringing back the program towards the latter half of the season. but it's just very short-sighted to now think that he's going to be able to do that all over again with the issues that they had last night. So look to see what happens when Florida plays LSU. I mean, I think if you're a Florida fan, I think you have to be pretty nervous going into it, but